Ginger Harrington. Hi, Ginger. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good. We're so happy to have you. Ginger's going to be one of our panelists, and she has lots of experience not only with the military, but also being part of a military ministry as well. So she's going to tell us some more about that. But right now, I want to tell you a little bit about Ginger. Ginger is married to a Marine that is retired. He was a Marine in the Marine Corps for 24 years, and
Yep.
he's now retired. Woohoo! I told her I'm just facing that myself. Mine's retiring in 3 years, and it's going to be interesting moving into that retired life.
Different season.
Yes, it's going to be fun. She's the mother of 3 kids, 26, 24, and 21. She lives in Virginia. And her favorite duty station was Japan. Why is that? Why was Japan your favorite?
I loved living in a different culture. Now, we lived on base, so we weren't completely saturated in a different culture, but it was a really nice combination of American culture and Japanese culture. And then I'm a beach fan, so Okinawa has some extraordinarily beautiful beaches. And I'll be honest, when we got orders, I freaked out and didn't want to go. And it ended up being my favorite. And I'm pretty sure that I left my fingernails down the fingernail tracks down the tarmac when it was time to leave.
Yes, that's how I was when we went on our first cruise. I left my fingernail tracks like, no, I don't want to go back to my real life.
But, it just really surprised me at how much I loved it. And that was kind of one of a big lesson for me in military life is don't go in with presuppositions that something's going to be terrible or difficult because you just never know.
Yes, you don't. I know my sister, they were stationed in Japan and her husband is Navy, and she absolutely loved it. The hardest thing that she had is her daughter is a vegetarian, is a vegan, and she had a really hard time getting vegan food for her daughter. Otherwise, she was good. But we've never been stationed overseas. Being reserves, we've always been stateside. But I did go deploy with him when he went TDY for a couple of weeks to Germany. I went with him, and that was interesting to be in a different country and different language and everything. So, and I really enjoyed that, but I don't know if I would enjoy living overseas. But like you said, don't go into it with a preset mindset.
Yeah.
And see, and I always have that thing about Asia too. I don't know, because I don't like fish, and I'm not a beach fan. I'm a mountain fan, so I don't know. I can't imagine that I would say Asia was my favorite, but like you said, you never know until you try.
Right.
Exactly. So you are a professional speaker as well. You've been speaking for quite a while, since 2006.
Yeah.
Where do you primarily speak?
I speak for a lot of military audiences. I'm on the speaking team for Planting Roots, Strength to Thrive in Military Life, and that's the military ministry that you mentioned. I speak to church groups, MOPS groups, women's retreats and conferences, and I hope in the near future to start branching out into writing conferences as well.
Oh, okay. That'll be awesome, because you're the editor at Planting Roots as well, correct?
I am. I direct all of their publishing, and we started that ministry 5 years ago with the goal of creating products for military, written by military, inspirational Bible studies, devotionals, and things like that. And so we started out with blog and grew our writing team. And so last year we put out our first 3 books, very ambitious.
Yay! Yes, 3 in a year. Wow.
And we are getting ready to release our next Bible study August 16th.
Yay! So tell us a little bit about that. Tell everybody where they can go to get some more information on that.
All righty. That Bible study is called, this is the proof copy, guys, so it's got a little fun line across here. It's called Flourish, Wherever the Military Sends You. It is a 6-week Bible study on Psalm 92, and our theme this year is Flourish. And so it is, it's a great little Bible study, and it is all kinds of military experience worked into it, and the challenges, applying the scriptures to challenges that we face in military life. And it is perfect for individual use or small group use. It is available now on Amazon, but we're actually launching it on our Planting Roots Facebook page, August 16th, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, so you guys be sure and go check that out and look at that. I like that it's 6 weeks too, because sometimes you get these Bible studies that are 13, 14 weeks, and you feel like that's like a big commitment. And in military life, you never know, you don't know sometimes what's going to be going on next week. So, not having to make too big of a commitment is like a good thing for me. Short-term commitments.
This is our second Bible study that we're releasing this year. The first one I want to take just a second to tell you about, because there might be folks listening that would be interested in this. We actually partnered with the American Bible Society, their armed services ministry, and we produced a Bible study for military active duty women in uniform. And it is an introduction to the Bible called Bible Boot Camp for Military Women. And this is specifically for the woman in uniform. The target audience is the ages 18 to 30, and American Bible Society, they have already sent out over 2,000 copies of this book. Amazing. So we are so proud of that and so happy to have been able to partner with American Bible Society, and we're going to be doing some new projects with them in the near future. So all very exciting.
Yes, that's amazing. And I have a niece that's in the Air Force and in the barracks and, just very young in the military. I will definitely have to tell her about that, because I'm sure that's something she would be very interested in. Even though she is a Christian, I'm sure that it has just a lot of vital information. She talks to my husband a lot over Instant Messenger, talking about Air Force stuff that they can, kind of relate back and forth.
Right. And it is designed for someone who's never read the Bible before, who just is curious, what is this big book about? And it's a neat little book. We were super
somebody like me that gets bogged down in their Bible study this morning with all these names that I can't pronounce. And I'm like, why am I having to read all these names that I can't pronounce? And then it occurs to me that half of these are women's names. And I'm going, wow, in that time, for God to put their name in there is really amazing.
It really was, yes.
Yes, for him to specifically call them out by name meant that they really were having an impact. And that I thought that was amazing. And I also discovered that my mother's name is a biblical name, which I never knew. So I knew that she was named after her grandmother, but I never knew that Julia was a biblical name, and it's in Romans. So I thought, it's like, wow, okay, so I had 2 revelations today, which is good on any day.
Yes. Yes.
So you have your own book out. Tell us about your book.
I do. I am so honored to have a book out with Abington Press. This is my debut book, Holy in the Moment, Simple Ways to Love God and Enjoy Your Life. It released in March 2018, and it is a SELA finalist for Christian Living for 2018. It also took a silver medal with the Military Writers Association of America, as well as a top 10 finalist for Author Academy Awards last October. So
yes,
anyway,
this is where we met.
Yes, it is. It is. And so I've just been so honored to have this book out. And I call it a legacy book because it is the things that my story, my personal struggles with anxiety and perfectionism, insecurity, that drive to try to do it all, be it all, that pressure that we put on ourselves. It's my story with that and what God has taught me over the past 20 years. And so somebody can read in, a couple of hours things that have taken me 20 years, nose to the carpet kind of things to learn. And it's filled with practical information and heartfelt stories and just real honesty about the struggle of what it feels like to struggle with anxiety, what it feels like to struggle with insecurity, and learning to find your strength in God.
Yes, and I think that's something that many of us face. I know so many women, especially, and I know, a lot of the spouses that are out there struggle with that depression and anxiety, and that's a huge thing right now. I had not realized until I started on this journey what a struggle women were having, and I've been through that and written my book on my struggle through childhood trauma and how it led to chronic illness, and my struggle with depression and anxiety, and really how being separated, we moved and we were separated from all of our family and our friends at the time, and how being separated, I felt like at the time was a bad thing, but now I can see that that was God removing me so that he could have his time to work in me and not have those outside voices influencing me.
Right. Sometimes with military life, we mourn the fact that we have been sent away from family and friends. We're continually leaving support systems and rebuilding new support systems every few years. And sometimes we mourn that. And there is something to mourn when you've left behind a support system, someone that you love, someone that you've counted on, or a really great friend. But as difficult as some of those transitions can be, there's always blessings on the other side of that challenge. And one of the things that I found, particularly as a young couple, when we first moved away from our parents and established our own household, is that we really established our own relationship as husband and wife, our own household, our own ways of doing things that I noticed with some of my friends who stayed in my hometown and things like that. I think that independence and clarity as to who you are took longer to establish because they didn't have to leave their roots. They didn't have to leave all that was familiar. And God does build in us a tremendous amount of resiliency just in the sheer mobility of military life. And I'll be honest, the first chapter of my book is about a huge struggle with anxiety that onset with military move. And it onset with Graves' disease, a hyperthyroid function.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally did not sleep for almost 2 months. I had to stop driving the car because I was so sleep deprived that one time I was taking my kids to school. I pulled up to the stoplight and I just stared at the light. It went through 2 cycles and my son finally said, "Mom, are you taking us to school?" And Elizabeth, that terrified me that I could have had an accident and put my children in harm's way because I'd not been sleeping. And so anyway, the first chapter of my book is just really a very personal struggle with that mobility piece, that insecurity that comes with military moves, and that can come with the onset of disease or illness. But it also was where God began to teach me that I can't define my faith by my feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And that I have to choose moment by moment what I'm going to put my faith in, who I'm going to put my faith in, whether I'm going to try to grunt it out, pull myself up by the bootstraps and make myself better, which sometimes just doesn't work all that well, or am I going to really depend on the Lord and let him take me where I need to go and do what he needs to do in the process and trust him. And so for me, that was the foundation of a great journey that's reflected in my book, and really learning some practical tools to address anxiety, to address depression, and really learn to listen to my inner voices that sometimes have believed things that aren't true.
Yes.
I have my own internal hissy fits sometimes, and I just want something to be a particular way, or heaven help me, I do not want to move again. And being able to work through those in a productive way, both emotionally and relationally, professionally and spiritually, is something that happens moment by moment. And as military folks, we need tools to be able to do that well.
Yes, we do. And I know I'm even going through that right now. When we moved here to North Carolina, we got this assignment. We thought, yes, this is where we want to be. This is where we're going to settle. It's where we're going to stay. But I still can't bring myself to put those pictures on the wall, because every time I get all those pictures put up and just where I want them and just like I want them, then we get orders. And even though I know in my head we're not getting orders, we're retiring here, but then my husband comes home, about a month or so ago, and he's like, I don't know if I want to stay here. It's really not what I expected. And I went, aha, there's a reason I haven't hung pictures.
Elizabeth, that is hilarious. How long have you lived there?
3 years.
Oh, and you don't have any pictures on the wall?
Not any, none.
Oh, wow.
None.
Wow.
I hung my quilt that my mother-in-law made me to celebrate my New Orleans Saints Super Bowl win as for the podcast, as you know, because the room has hard floors and all the echo. So I hung that for that purpose. But other than that, no.
I think you touch on something that we all come up with coping skills and ways of coping with some of the challenges of military life. And sometimes those can be a little superstitious. Do you mind if I call that superstitious?
Yeah, I agree.
And, something that happened to me when we moved to Virginia, knowing it was our last move, we moved from Okinawa to Virginia, and my husband still had 2 more years in. And this kind of felt like home. We'd lived in Virginia before. And so I just remember being so done, because one of the things that happened to me is after that time in the year 2000, when I had an onset of Graves' disease and really battled with anxiety, I would get better, and then it would all come back and resurface every time that we moved. And even though I wasn't in active thyroid disease, my body had learned how to respond to the instability of moving and changing my security systems. And sometimes I would be like moving to a new place and I would just cry in the grocery store because it was unfamiliar. And I thought, come on, girl, grow up. That's not who I am. And it's not who I am. It was just a struggle in a way of coping with the challenges of mobility and transitions in military life. But by the time we got here, each time we moved, that struggle seemed to like draw out a little bit longer, and I was exhausted and done. And if I could have thrown in the towel, I would have thrown in the towel. But sometimes in military life, we don't get that luxury.
Yes.
And so you've got to find another way. And we went to high school orientation for my daughter, and I didn't want to be there. And I'm normally a very friendly person. I enjoy making new friends. I've never taken the coping skill of isolation. I'm not going to be here long enough to make new friends. Hey, if I'm somewhere a week, I'm happy to make a new friend. But this time I just could not muster anything in me to be friendly, to introduce myself to someone. It was very unusual for me. And I remember I was just like, Lord, if you want me to meet somebody at this orientation, you are just going to have to bring them to me, because I am not saying anything.
And I'm going to greet them like this.
Of this. And, for those who are listening on the podcast, I just stomped my foot and crossed my arms and nodded my head. And so that was just like my internal hissy fit of not doing this again. Right. And I know that God was just chuckling.
He's like, yeah, right. Okay, whatever.
Just wait, sweetheart. And I knew one person in town. And we go to large high school. So, not likely that I'm going to see that one person at a new student orientation. But she happened to be there, and I hear my name from across the room. And she's like, Ginger, come over here. I've got some people I want to introduce you to. And so she introduced me to and sat me down next to 5 ladies. Those ladies all became my friends. One of them, one of my closest friends here in this area. And it was like God was saying, honey, I get it. If you can't do this, but I can. And I'm going to just, this one time, I'm going to plunk you right down in the middle of a support system. And other times when we moved, I had to go out and introduce myself and things like that. But that one time I was just so done, and God was so gracious. But I just really have a heart for women who just get so tired of all that goes in the physical, the mental, the emotional, all that goes into moving your kids, getting resettled, all of those kinds of things. And sometimes we really do just need the support and encouragement of someone else who has been there and done that and come out on the other side.
Yeah, somebody that can say, you know what, I've been through this, I lived through it, I did it. I tell people it's like an Oreo cookie. The leaving and the getting there are the hard parts, and the middle is the good creamy part. So you just got to get through that initial hard part. And we've made friends and everything here. I just can't bring myself to put pictures on the wall, especially when he comes home and says, I don't know if I really want to stay here. I'm like, well, I'm really not hanging pictures now because I don't want to take them back down.
There you go.
They're still in boxes with stickers and numbers. Everybody knows our inventory numbers, so they're still in those. They're well taken care of. They're good.
Yes. Well, we've been in this house 8 years, and every now and then I still find a sticker on something. I thought, how in the world can there be any more of those moving stickers?
I know.
But they're there.
They're like laundry. I think they multiply. I really do. I think at night they multiply, because I will find multiple ones, all different colors. And I'm like, I know I pulled the stickers off of this last time we moved, but they just keep accumulating. So, but the thing I love is I haven't accumulated a lot of stuff. I'm starting to accumulate stuff here because we've been here 3 years, and that's kind of the max for us. Usually this is where I'm starting to purge. So
I cannot say that. I could, in fact, just for fun, because I'm just going to show y'all my mess. Look, this is my office. I actually try to work in here. It's a beautiful office, but there is so much stuff in here that sometimes I just walk right back out and work someplace else. And I'm like, I have got to clean out.
I know I do. I'm not showing you mine because it is way worse than that. And I used to be such a perfectionist and such a clean freak, because I tell people the mess inside of me was so messed up that the only thing I could control was the outside. So I tried to have a perfect my house was perfect and it was clean, and there were vacuum streaks in the floor. I don't know if any of you ladies can relate, but I was a major control freak. My kids were perfect in public, home, not so much, but perfect.
I never managed that one.
I was really, and so now for me to let things go and not stress over them is huge. And I know when I was going through counseling during Beauty Rising from Brokenness, there were fur balls flying all over the floor, and the house was just a big mess. And
not supposed to put fur balls?
Yeah, well, I didn't for a long time. I mean, as soon as I saw them, I would have the little Swiffers vacuuming them up. But
they're just increasing your immune system, making your immune system better.
I didn't Clorox everything. Just suck. It just had to appear perfect. It didn't have to be perfect. It had to appear to the outside world as perfect. And I tell my counselor, I'm like, I've gone crazy. I've gone to the whole other end. My house is a disaster. There's mail all over the counter. There's hairballs everywhere. And she's like, it'll swing back to center. Just hold on.
Right.
And it did. I can deal with the mess, but then I want some things to be tidy. And so, and it's all about that learning that balance. Yes. And that is something that's huge. And I know, Elizabeth posted a picture of her desk the other day after we did her interview, and that's Elizabeth Myers. That's our first interview. And she, her desk was so neat and tidy and everything. And I'm like, mine was not that way at all. I am not letting anybody see mine. She said, I did that right before the podcast, and what you don't see is the pile of papers on the floor. I'm like, okay, I feel better. You're not perfect.
Well, I think you're bringing something up that I'd love to chat with the folks, the military folks that are listening. And that's that desire for control. I think one of the things in military life is so oftentimes, particularly as spouses, we don't have a high level of control about where we're going. sometimes where we're going to live, what our spouses are actually going to be doing, whether or not they're deploying, whether or not they're in harm's way. We don't always have control over where our children are going to go to school or who our neighbors are, and all of
Pretty
that.
much nothing. We pretty much have control over pretty much nothing.
And the reality of that is, welcome to the human race is not something that is specific to the military, but that desire for control manifests itself in a variety of ways. And for me, if I can't control it, I can worry about it and try to think of everything that could happen and prepare myself in advance. And that's kind of how anxiety works. And for you, you were trying to control your physical environment, trying to control your family. And that's, that sometimes being able to recognize when one of the underlying issues of whatever we might be doing or struggling with, that one of those underlying issues is rebelling against the fact that we don't have control over something. Being able to accept that and to trust God with it and realize that things are going to work out, and, there's good with the bad and all of those kinds of things. Being able to realize and identify that really helps us to make a better choice in the moment, to be able to take our iron grip off of whatever our thing is, whether it's food, alcohol, anxiety, depression, who our kids hang out with, what our house looks like, just all of those kinds of things. When those things become a main thing that we're putting, trying to find our security in, it never works.
No, it never does.
But so oftentimes the underlying part of that is a lot, wanting to try to control something and wanting to find our security in something, some sort of stability. And so for me, that process of learning to trust God moment by moment has everything to do with being able to identify when I am trying to control something, when I am believing something that's not true, or trying to find my security or identity in what I'm doing, where we live, who my friends are, anything other than being who God made me to be and trusting God with that. That's really kind of the heart of so many of the struggles that we experience in life and in military life. And so being able to be able to think about what the root is, not just like what I'm struggling with, but what's the root underneath there,
right,
is so helpful. And I think that's a key factor for being able to deal with stuff.
Yes, I agree. And that's what I went through when I went through that journey, was going back and figuring out what was it that triggered me to feel this way. And it was growing up having a very chaotic childhood where my mom and my stepdad fought constantly, and it was just, and there was no discipline in the house, and everything was just chaotic. So the thing that I learned to control as a child and a young adult was my bedroom. My bed was always made. Everything was always perfectly put up and straightened up. And I was never, and that was that needing to have control over something in my life. And I carried that into adulthood, which we do. And, and then especially going into the military, see, like I take it your husband was in the military when you guys got married?
We were, I had started, this is a little bit funny, so I'm just going to interject it real quick. We were dating, and I was working at a private school in Charlotte, North Carolina. I thought, I'm going to be here forever. Our kids are going to go here. We're going to get married and just stay here. And he goes, hey, did I ever tell you I wanted to go in the Marine Corps and fly jets? And literally, it probably took me 5 minutes to even respond. Like I just could not even fathom. No one in my family, in my experience, had been in the military. My dad and my grandfather had been in the military in World War II, and way beyond my experience level. And I was like, what? I didn't sign up to be a military wife. And at the time I was teaching and my principal said, well, Ginger, you marry the man and not the job. And I thought, you know what? I'm not sure if that's true in the Marine Corps. But it's all worked out, and I'm so thankful for our military experience. And I'm even thankful for those moves that I struggled with, because there were so many great things about every place that we've lived. We have so many wonderful friendships through the years. And, yes, I miss those in-person relationships, but I wouldn't trade any of the blessings and benefits from any of our duty stations just to have the ability to not have to go through the process of transitioning. So
I agree completely. And Arnold and I were married 5 years, and he was a military brat. And when they moved to Louisiana, halfway through his freshman year, he sat down in the chair and said, "I'm done. I'm not moving again. This is home. I'm staying here." And his mother said he was adamant. He would, if they moved again, he would go live with somebody else, but he wasn't moving again. And so we met and we got married, and everything was happily. I thought, we're going to live here forever. This is home. Everything's lovely. And we had our first child, and we had gone to a family reunion. We were on our way back, and he's talking about he hated his job and it wasn't what he wanted, and he wasn't making the money he wanted, and he wanted to go drive long haul trucks. He wanted to drive. And I said, "Well, okay, if that's what you want to do, but this is your last family reunion you'll be able to attend. This will be your last birthday you'll probably be home for, Megan, her last birthday you'll be home for." And he started thinking, he's like, "No, I don't want to do that either." And a commercial for the military reserves came on the radio. And he said, "Well, what if I went in the reserves?" And I almost fell out of my chair. I could not believe this guy who said, "I will never," was even considering it. Yeah. And so he was 25 when he went in the military. And we did not move until he went back to school, got his degree, and went through officer candidate school, became an officer, and that's when we started moving. So we've been on both sides of the spectrum. We were, and we've been reserves and DOD and activated for different conflicts. And so we've been on both ends of that. And the same thing, our son just got married in Missouri. And now our kids, that's one thing, our kids don't live anywhere near us because of all the moves. We've kind of left the kid or two as we've gone. And that was horrible.
Across the nation, right?
Yes. And that was really hard. But sitting at Josh's wedding, and we had friends from Massachusetts that flew in. We had friends from Louisiana that flew in. We had his very best friend that he grew up with as a teenager that came and was one of his groomsmen. We had, just people from Michigan, from everywhere we had lived just about. And I'm sitting there, and with my family situation, not having my birth family in my life anymore, when the photographer's taking the pictures, they're going, "Okay, Dad's side of the family," and his mom and dad and his sister and Arnold, they all get up there and they're like, "Okay, Mom's side of the family." And I'm like, "Okay, come on, military family, let's go."
I love that.
This is this is my contribution, because I am that extreme extrovert where my husband tells people not only does she never meet a stranger, but before she leaves, she's probably related to half of you. So, I never, ever meet a stranger. So, so I'm like, this is my family. I just pick them up as I go. And I like to choose my family anyway.
Right. Yeah.
So you spouses out there and you military supporters, you think about that. If you meet somebody, because that was one of the hardest things for me when we would make a move, was somebody was like, "Oh, well, you're going to be moving in a few years. I don't really want to get attached." And that's just like a knife to the heart, because I'm like, you know what? I'm worth getting to know. You're just losing out.
Well, and it is a loss when we allow ourselves to withdraw and isolate ourselves. We are the ones who miss out.
Yes.
We are the ones who have the loss. And so I've been learning not to let the fear of loss deter me, not to let the fear of failure or having to say goodbye deter me from missing out on the joy that I could be experiencing today, the good times, the friendships, the growing experiences, the new resources. Like, there's just so many benefits that come through the relationships that we build in military life. And that's whether or not we wear a uniform or support someone who wears the uniform.
Exactly.
This is a wonderful wonderful life. It's not an easy life,
No.
but there are some extraordinary blessings, just as there are some extraordinary challenges.
And now that I think about it, all of those people that came for my son's wedding, none of them were military. Now, I mean, not that, our military family wouldn't have come, but these were people that we had met through our church, through other organizations and things, and you just click with certain people. And, of course, some people can make it, some people can't, and there's things like that. But, don't shut yourself off to thinking, well, I just have to attend the military functions, or I just have to keep, open yourself up to whatever God has for you, because you just never know. It might be your neighbor next door. I know we had a lady in Minnesota and Michigan. We've lived in all the M states, so they all get jumbled in my head. But she was in her 60s, and I would just go pick her up. Two of my kids took art class. So I dropped them off at art class, and one of my other daughter and I would go pick her up, and we'd take her to Red Lobster once a month because she just loved to go. And she couldn't drive, and so that was her treat, but that was our treat because we got to spend time with her, and she was like a grandmother figure to my daughter. And that's a lot of times our kids don't get that, and so you have to go out and seek those things out and find them. Don't close yourself off and just stay shut away, because you lose out, and all the other people who might get to know you and might be blessed by you lose out as well. So, I just kind of want to leave our audience with that today too, that, just be sure that you go out and reach out and stretch yourself. Do something brave every day.
Right.
Step out of your comfort zone.
And one thing to interject into this conversation is, you're not going to be best friends with everybody. Not every relationship is going to be a great relationship. There are times when military life can have some gossip and can be, particularly if you live on base or on post, it can be a little bit like living in a fishbowl. But persevere. Don't let the negative experiences ruin the possibility of great experiences. Don't let the hard relationships poison the good relationships, because at the end of the day, making an impact through where God has us. It's one of the reasons why we call it planting roots, being able to plant our roots in faith and be able to be productive and flourish and fruitful wherever God sends us. And that is such an important part of military life, of being able to thrive wherever God sends you.
Yes, and bloom where you're planted. That's what I tell people. You just bloom wherever you're planted. And some of us have been transplanted a lot of times. We've moved 13 times over this 20-year span of his career. And so, it's been 2 to 3 years every time. That's why we're kind of getting the itch now, I think, because
you do sort of get used to that. It's weird for us. We've been in this house for 8 years, and other than growing up, that's longer than I've lived anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a part of me that's super happy about that. And yet I'm trying to hold that with open hands, because when my husband retires, he would like to be someplace that does not have the that doesn't tax your military retirement, and it is a little calmer pace of life than it can be where we live.
Yes, and that's kind of our plan too. I think our plan is to kind of do the motorhome thing and travel around and see things that we haven't done. Let me speak and let me sign books and do my thing, and he's going to support me, and he's going to travel around behind me this time. So we're going to switch roles. So we'll see how well that works.
Yeah, but we'll see how that. Good luck with that. It's amazing, because you have so much to encourage people with, and such a powerful story. Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and I'm super excited about getting a chance to work with you.
Yes, me too. I am too. And so I want to tell everybody one more time, we're with Ginger Harrington, and she's with Planting Roots. Check the show notes below the show, and I will have all of her contact information there, so you can get in touch with her. You look up her on social media, go to her website, see what she's doing, look up her book. It's amazing. And all the awards that it's got, you can tell how amazing it is and how much you'll be blessed by it and how much we're blessed by her. And we're excited to have her on our panel to share all of her experience and her knowledge. And we can't wait to start those panels, and they'll be starting in about 3 to 4 weeks. So you guys stay tuned. And next week we'll have our next panelist on, and we'll do our interview with Dorothy. Thanks, guys. See you later.